since you guys like these little contests, let's do one more. All right? So what I'm going to do, and the winner of this gets a bucket full of pride. And you get to showcase your vast drumming vocabulary and knowledge to the audience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a beat. You guys tell me what song it's from. You ready? I don't see any hands. Takers? Oh, what are you talking about? No, I'm thinking of one thing. Wait, so a brave soul has their hand raised. That wasn't what I was thinking. Let's try one more. See if you know this one. I can't even tell who had their hand up first. I'm not calling on him. He's one of my students. He kind of knows what's going on anyway. Just shout it out. What is it? All right. Now, let me ask you this, okay? How did you know that was the song Come Together? Okay. True. Now, as we like to say in my business, I've done my own segue. And that leads me right into my own clinic, which is, Andrew, Signature and Definitive Grooves. Okay? Yes, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to demonstrate about 10 signature and definitive grooves. And we're going to talk about why these are important for you to know. And we're going to talk about also sort of how they were created, why they were created, and what you need to know about how to play these. Because some of these, most of them are fairly simple, but some of them have some intricacy. And we want to talk about that, okay? So first off, let's do some defining. First thing, what is a signature or a definitive groove? First bullet point says it can be a proprietary groove with a unique identity created only for that one particular song or an arrangement. So, for example, let's take what I just played a few seconds ago, Come Together. That is, again, uniquely identifiable. Could you play other things in that place? You absolutely could, but it is not going to be, it won't even be the same song. You will have changed that song, right? So it's uniquely identifiable from that. Part two, that particular groove, this signature groove, must be played at least directionally accurate to retain the integrity of the song. Okay? The third one, that groove is usually not just accompaniment, it's orchestrated to be a melodic and rhythmic anchor for the song. 4, just like what we did here, it can literally identify the song. In fact, I would be willing to bet you that probably 90% of the ones that I'm going to play for you, you're going to get it. Okay? The next one, it can be the structural backbone used to compose a song. There's going to be a few of those that we will talk about today. In other words, that the groove actually predates the song. Okay? And then, the last bullet point, in my opinion, might be the most important part. Okay? It's a groove that is commonly referenced when describing what someone wants to hear, but can't clearly articulate what they want. Okay? Now, let me give you just a scenario of how that affects us as drummers. There have been times that I've been in a recording studio recording someone's original material, and they don't really know what they want. They might have a chart in front of you, but there's not a lot of drum notation on there, but they go, I want something that sounds like this. I want you to play something that reminds me of this. And having that bit of like drum, I like to call it just like drum wisdom or just overall like depth in what you're trying to accomplish, you can pull through that Rolodex of your mind and you go, okay, I know what he means when he says, I want something sort of like Come Together by Ringo Starr and the Beatles, right? Okay? So that could possibly be the most important part on this, all right? Now, part two. What a signature or definitive groove is not. It's not just simply a great feeling groove. Now, most of these are going to be great feeling, but it's simply not just that. I mean, if that was the case, Rock Steady by Bernard Purdie on that Aretha Franklin record, that'd be like the most signature and definitive groove in history. I mean, unbelievable track. If you guys are not familiar with that, you stop right now and go out and listen to it. It'll change your life. I'm not kidding you. And there's nothing particularly difficult or like signature about it other than it just feels fantastic. If Bernard Purdie, put it this way, if Bernard Purdie had never played on another track other than Rock Steady, he would still be on a Mount Rushmore of groove drummers, okay? Second one, a complicated beat. Most of these beats are not that complicated. A few of them are. I'll be the first to say a few of them are. But it doesn't mean that it's just a complicated beat. And then the third thing, a groove identifiable by the person who played it. Okay? Now, one of sort of the benchmarks of a lot of drummers is like, can you play like, let's say, the Purdie Shuffle, going back to Bernard Purdie. Well, here's the thing. The Purdie Shuffle is easily identifiable by that person's name and even all of the other what we call derivative grooves that come off of that Purdie Shuffle, like Rosanna and Fool in the Rain and blah, 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 right? But just, and by my own admission there, it's used numerous times. Like Death Cab for Cutie has a song that uses that Purdie Shuffle. So it's not necessarily a groove that's identifiable by someone's name. Now, moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about that first groove that I played, okay? So here is the beat that I played for Come Together. And I will also now play you just a little bit of the audio file. Ooh, sorry, guys. Oh, there we go. Here we go. There's a little delay on that. Okay, now that was the part that I played, right? Okay? Now, let's just talk briefly about, like, how do you execute that type thing? And also, one of the things you'll notice, I think most of y'all can see kind of up here. Do you guys see that I have these little towels on top of these drums? These are, we're going to be giving some of these away also in a little while. These are those new tea towels that Tandem Drums has created. And one of the things that's very unique about this particular sound as well is you notice that when you hear Ringo playing that little tom run when he goes around, it's really dry and super articulate, right? So you got to make sure you have some hands, right, so that you can play that and it sounds good and it's very articulate because it's muted, right? A couple of other things. Think about whenever he plays that, it's got that really kind of unique, snaky kind of a feel. You got to have some groove in that. It's got to feel right whenever you do it too. Another thing, and this might be probably the most unique thing about this, I would say 90-95% of most drummers are right-handed dominant. Ringo is left-handed, but he plays on a right-handed setup, okay? One of the things that makes this groove, in particular the way that it's written out, a little bit challenging for folks who are right-handed dominant, is once you start on that high tom and go down, you need to start on your left hand and alternate your hands so that you can get your toms. You can see at that last note of that sextuplet, so that you can make that note on your right hand as it moves around the drums, because your left hand will never leave this first tom. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Just there on count 3. Start with your left hand. So if you're not comfortable with that, that will create a little bit of a hitch as well, okay? And then the last thing that adds a little bit of nuance to it, if you notice when you listen to this track, you'll hear that when he makes that sextuplet into that last set of triplets, There's a little bit of a crescendo in there. It just adds a little bit of like musical nuance. It adds a little bit of nuance to the phrase, right? So it's a nice thing to add to that. Okay, and by the way, I want to mention this as well before I go on to the next one. If anybody has any questions or anything, I am all about the interactive aspect of this masterclass. Feel free, jump right in, okay? All right, here we go, number 2. You didn't see that a few seconds ago. Somebody had their hand up. Go ahead and say it. Sing, sing, sing. All right. Okay. So that is sing, sing, sing. Let me go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay. And then we'll listen to just a little bit of it as well. Then it just moves into like a swing groove, right? Okay? Now, again, this is a type of groove. It's just ubiquitous, especially in big band and jazz drumming. There'll be times that you will be let's take big band for a second. You might get an arrangement put in front of you, and at the top of the page, it might say something like this: jungle drums. Jungle drums is just another one of those, I guess you might say, synonyms for a sing, sing, sing style groove, tom bass groove like that, okay? So it's incredibly important that you're aware of what those things mean, right? So this is, and by the way, the drummer on this is Gene Krupa, and the version that we heard there was the Benny Goodman version. It was originally done by Louis Prima. This is part of that whole old school jump swing style type thing that they had back in the late 30s and 40s and so, okay? Now, a couple of things I want to talk about this as far as this groove goes. If you'll notice, look at the, there we go, look at the accent structure up there. The accent structure, it's not exactly this, but it has its bones. It sort of has its roots in something like this. Let me play this for you, okay? So, see if you can recognize what this might be. What do you think that is? Well, it's similar, but really what I was getting at, because Bo Diddley is also a derivative of like an old school New Orleans type groove, right? So now, for example, if I just embellish this just a little bit more. See where that's kind of deriving from, right? So it's got some of those bones of like old school New Orleans grooves, which, by the way, keep that in mind. You are going to see and hear this over and over again. A lot of the roots of our drumming, like Western style drumming, comes from that area, okay? And then the last thing I want to say about this is that you better have some hands, again, if you're going to play this, because, again, you are playing this on generally going to be the lowest drum on your drum set. This is a 16 that I'm playing down here, and we know that these drums don't respond quite as well, right, as when you're playing on a snare drum. So you better have some good hands, and in particular, you got to make that left hand accent match what's happening on your right as well. And a little bit further to that point is that back when Louis Prima's band and Benny Goodman's band and all these guys were playing, they were playing on calfskin drums, okay? Or calfskin heads, I should say. And anybody who's ever played on those know that weather is your enemy. And if you live east of the Mississippi River, which I did for my entire life until 4 years ago, you tried to avoid that at all costs playing on those, because, I mean, the humidity that hits those drums, you cannot get them tuned up. It's the same thing for hand drums, right? Like congas and bongos and stuff that use like either water buffalo or rawhide heads on there. If you get moisture inside those drums, the only thing you can do is take a fan, right, and lay the drum on its side and put a fan toward it to blow some of that moisture out of the head. So again, to that point, you had to really play those drums. You had to bring those accents out because a lot of times those drum heads were boggy from the humidity. Okay? All right, any questions about that one? All right, let's go on to the next one. I'm going to remove one tea towel. See if you know this one. I'm going to do this too. Anybody? Yeah, yes, you. That is the Bo Diddley beat, right? Yeah, that is the Bo Diddley beat. And again, it is very close. It has, again, that same type of like bones of like a New Orleans style groove. And again, this is another one that gets referred to all the time. Oh, this song's got a Bo Diddley beat. Jeff Porcaro tells you when he's playing the Rosanna groove on the bass drum, putting the Bo Diddley beat on the bass drum. You gotta know that. You gotta know what that means, right? So here's our next slide. Whoop. There we go, okay? And so there's your Bo Diddley beat played originally by Clifton James, okay? Now, the fine eye will tell you that when you look at the accent pattern up there, it outlines another very popular and oft-used device. And I'll go ahead and lead the witness here in Afro-Cuban music. Anybody know what that is? Yeah. Yeah, what kind of 3-2 clave? Son clave. 3-2 son clave. So essentially the accent pattern for the Bo Diddley beat has that 3-2 son clave feel to it, right? And again, here's the thing. On this, you got to make sure you have some hands. You got to articulate that pattern. You can't let one hand get dominant above the other, or you can't let your non-accented notes get above the accents. That destroys the feel of the pattern, right? Okay? The other thing, there is some lore that this pattern also came from. Does everybody know there's a little rhythmic sort of phrase, shave and a haircut, 2 bits, right? Supposedly that comes from that as well. Now here's one more bucket of pride. How much money is 2 bits worth? 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1. Hint? Got it? 2 bits, 25 cents. 4 bits, 50 cents. 6 bits, 75 cents. 4 bits, $1. Right? Okay? 25 cents. You knew you were going to learn some stuff when you came here today, right? Also, did you notice that whenever I played that, this groove is kind of in between straight and swung. It's kind of in the cracks. Shoes in the dryer, right? The old wagon with one square wheel type feel, right? Okay, so that's in there as well. And then the last thing I want to mention about this, and then we'll listen to a little bit of it, is that you got to have a little bit of flexibility moving this beat around the kit. Okay? Because you notice that I played it 2 different ways. I played it one way that was similar to how it was written up here to where it was all on like one surface on one drum. And then you notice, if you see some old videos, there's videos of Clifton James playing it to where he's playing the non-accented notes on the snare and he's moving his hands up to that first tom for the accent. So have a little flexibility of moving that around. So here's the audio version of it.
Baby, diamond ring. If that diamond ring don't shine, he gonna take it to a private eye.
Notice how loud like the maracas are in the mix. It's kind of interesting. Okay, and so that's the Bo Diddley beat. All right? Here's the next one. See if you can pick this one up. You're like, oh no, he's reaching for the brushes. Nobody? I'm playing it right, I swear. Tony. Yeah, yes. That is Liberty DeVitto playing on Billy Joel's tune, Just the Way You Are. Okay? So let's take a look at it. Why is that happening? There we go. Okay. And so there's the groove. You can see it's kind of written out like a halftime feel. The snare line, that's supposed to be right hand with a brush, right? And then the left hand makes the moving between the snare and the tom, right? Whenever you play it with your left hand with a stick, okay? Now, let's listen to just a little bit of that, okay?
I'd leave you in times of trouble. We never could have come this far. I took the good times, I'll take the bad times. I take you just the way you are. Don't go trying some new fashion. Don't change the color of your hair. You always have my unspoken passion. Although I might not seem to care, I don't want clever.
Okay. Now, a couple of things about this. Okay, it's intrinsically a little bit challenging to play simply from the standpoint you've got a brush in one hand and a stick in the other. You definitely want those accents to come out with the stick, but you can't let that brush get buried. Okay, and so you've got to use a little bit of articulation. Those taps that you're playing with your right hand, you got to hit them a little bit, right, for those things to come out. Now, that being said, there's a couple of interesting things about like the creation of this particular groove for this. It's my understanding that when this song was being recorded, they sort of had this idea of like, we want to have this kind of a loungy, bossa nova-ish type drum feel. And I think they just kind of let Liberty DeVitto go on this. He may not have even known how to play a bossa nova, I don't know. But he came up with something that was, as I like to say, musically appropriate, right? And so this thing sort of has that kind of bones of having sort of like a, I guess you might say it, a backbeat-oriented, bossa nova type feel, okay? And so there's part of that. But there's another thing I want you to think about for a second on this. Can you think of what other kind of a groove in popular music has that one bass drum note right on count 3 of each bar? Yeah, it's got like a one drop, right? It's got this kind of an inch. I don't think they were ever even thinking of that. But it's almost got that kind of reggae one drop kind of a feel, that real heavy, right? So it's got that kind of an interesting reggae one drop feel to it as well. And then last thing I was going to mention to it, to kind of like lean into that loungy type feel with the, kind of like, you're wearing the smoking jacket, playing the brush in one hand. Notice the instrumentation on that track as well. It's got that like heavily, I don't know, like chorused style Rhodes, laid back kind of a feel. And so that brush in one hand versus, playing a stick, it cuts down on some of that percussive attack, right? In other words, nobody wants to hear that at 3 o'clock in the morning in an old Vegas lounge, right? And so, in other words, that brush in one hand, it just kind of makes it a little bit more mellow, so to speak, than using a stick, all right? Any questions about that before we go to the next one? All right. Number 5. Jacob Ward. Sissy Strut. Sissy Strut, played by the incredible Zigaboo Modalist from the Meters, which, by the way, if you go by my office over there, on the percussion bulletin board over there, I do what I call a recommendation of the month, and this month's recommendation is the very best of the Meters. And that's, of course, the first track on there, okay? So let's take a look. Why is that happening? There we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Groove you to death. Unbelievable, right? Now, there are certain things on this tune that I call them non-negotiables. You got to do, okay? And this is one of those things that, as I like to tell my students all the time, YouTube is the best and worst thing that ever happened to drumming. Okay, because you're going to see people that play these certain grooves and do other demonstrations on there that it's kind of like, that's spurious at best, right? And let's just talk about a couple of things that you should do, in my opinion, on this, okay? If you look at this, the second measure, right, that first measure, that's just sort of like the very first bar. That's the very first measure that he plays on this track, and then it's mainly that second bar the whole rest of the way through. If you look at that hi-hat pattern on the top, you could easily play that with one hand. But as Buford T. Justice would say, you can think about it, but don't do it. You need to use both hands on that, because here's the thing. This thing intrinsically has that loose, kind of funky, swampy feel. You get a significantly more accurate and smoother sound when you play grooves with one hand, right? Like, let me give you a different example, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, drummers. If you're playing, let's say a groove that's about 80 beats per minute, okay? And it's a 16th note based hi-hat groove. To make that groove feel smoother, let me just demonstrate it. You should play that with one hand. It will be significantly smoother than if you play it with two hands. Two hands makes it loose. But now, I mean, if you want a loose feel, that's it. But in my opinion, you're better off doing something like this. As opposed to... But now it works in the opposite direction, though, right? For this, you are significantly better off getting that nice, loose, funky feel by alternating your hands on this, okay? Now, another thing, if you look at the way this groove is written out up here, okay, there's something that in the live version, and even in this studio version as well, that Modalist does quite often. And that is, he will take that on the E of 3 on the second measure there. The E of 3 on the bass drum, he will remove that. And so if you take that one double stop out right there, you have a linear groove. Right? So that means no other instruments are hitting simultaneously. And that in itself also creates that kind of snaky feel. Plus, the other thing, let me say one other quick thing. When you do put that bass drum in on the E of 3, that actually adds a significant level of complication and like sophistication to this groove. So there's kind of that weird paradoxical thing, right? As far as like, you put that bass drum note in, it sounds good, it sounds great, right? It certainly adds a layer of nuance and sophistication to it, as far as independence-wise. You take it out, and it turns into a true linear groove, right? Which then turns it into some, slightly different animal from that standpoint, okay? Let me see if there's anything else I want to talk about that. Here's the other thing I would say. Just one last thing about this. When you turn it into like a true linear groove, all those notes have to stand up straight, right? I mean, you got to make those things groove. They've got to sound right, because I want you to think about this from another different standpoint, okay? Some of our great linear drummers that we think about that like really play linear styles really well, like David Garibaldi and Mike Clark and Dave Weckl and Vinnie Colaiuta. When those guys play those kinds of grooves, if you were to take these things and put those grooves on like, say, a Pro Tools grid, those 16th notes stand up straight. They are right in line with one another. If those things start getting too far out of whack, those grooves sound limp, they sound weird, they don't sound right. And that's why that's another one of the more difficult things for drummers to learn how to play whenever you start working on that style of music, is those linear grooves have to be stand up straight, okay? Let's go to the next one. I'm going to go over here for this. Anyone? Poinciana. That's the Poinciana beat, popularized by Bernal Fournier. Also, just a quick side note on that. That song, we don't normally think of, like, especially straight ahead jazz as being like, oh, this is hit music. That song, that arrangement of Poinciana was actually a straight up hit for Ahmad Jamal Trio. So let's listen to it, and then I'm going to go back. I'm also going to play a few variations on it. I played two variations. I played the original one, the intro that you're going to hear, where he's playing left hand on hi-hat, right hand with a mallet on snare, okay? And then I'll play a few variations. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to play a couple of the variations on it as well, because this particular arrangement of Poinciana that has this definitive style of groove on it, again, it's another one of those things. I've actually recorded a couple of songs where an artist literally said, I want you to play a version of the Poinciana groove on this track. So, I mean, again, real world stuff as far as like the usefulness of it, okay? Now, if you'll notice, again, an interesting thing about this, mallet in the right hand, stick in the other hand. Okay, so it's going to have a different feel whenever you play. So that adds a little bit of nuance to it as well. Bernal Fournier is one of the great jazz drummers from New Orleans. So this thing is steeped in New Orleans style drumming. Now there's an interesting thing about this. That right hand thing that he's playing on snare drum is actually the type thing that a New Orleans bass drummer would play, but he's playing it with the right hand on the snare. Okay, so that's just kind of a little interesting, side note on it. As well, if you'll notice, again, this is just subtlety that I'm going to show you here. When he plays that groove at the beginning, he plays these notes on the hi-hat, but when he moves over and plays the floor tom, he leaves that hi-hat out. Because the other times when he plays and he moves up to the cymbal, whenever he moves over to the floor tom, he plays the bell, but this is just a subtlety. Then he goes to the bell. That's that bottom groove down there that I played, okay, where it starts on the, right? And one of the things I want to mention also, when you listen to this track, you'll notice that it is highly orchestrated from the standpoint of like, he's got these specific variations that he uses for the different choruses, right, whenever he plays. So that's just another thing. In other words, there's no happenstance on how he ended up putting these beats together, okay? Let's see if there's anything else I want to mention about this one. You better again, this is another one where don't underestimate the importance of playing an open-handed style groove like that. Most of us are very comfortable, especially if you're backbeat-oriented players, hands crossed over. You do that. It even affects people whenever you play ride cymbal. You're opening up. Hands are open. That's actually uncomfortable for a lot of drummers, right? So this is an open-handed concept. And you trust me, you could play it with your hands crossed. It's going to sound much better and feel better, and you're going to be able to orchestrate around the drum set significantly easier with the right-hand mallet and be able to move around and play the left-handed bell and hi-hat with your, or I should say, yeah, the bell and hi-hat with your left hand. Okay? Any questions? Let's keep going. Here's the next one. I'm going to apologize in advance, but this has to be done. Come on. Oh, okay, there we go. I was gonna say, there's no way I'm playing that wrong. Come on, yeah. So this is the pseudo buzzword slash free bird of the drum set, okay? But it's important that you know this, okay? So yes, this is Wipeout by the Surfaris drummer Ron Wilson, okay? And as you can see right here, there's the pattern that I played up there. Supposedly the inspiration for this is it was one of the marching band drum cadences that Ron Wilson's high school played. It's just a derivative of it, is essentially what it is. Now, I would also go ahead and tell you this, especially because it's just voiced on a tom, it's probably got some sort of like impetus or at least inspiration from some of these earlier grooves also, like either Sing, Sing, Sing or Bo Diddley. It really does make sense from that standpoint. And again, much like those other tunes that we talked about, like Bo Diddley groove and Sing, 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 depending on what drum you play it on, because of course you play it on floor tom as well, you better have some hands, right? Better have some hands to bring out those accents and make sure the non-accents don't drown them out. Keep those the non-accents just like a low undercurrent, okay? So we'll listen to just a second of this. Little solo. I'm going to stop that right there because I feel like I'm already losing some credibility with everybody. But no, seriously, this is a part of our drumming lexicon. You need to be aware of this, right? Again, it is for those veterans who've been out here. It is a little bit of a punchline, right? But you need to be able to know when somebody goes, "Hey, you need to play something that sounds sort of like Wipeout." There you go. Okay, let's move on. Here's our next one. This next one, now this is an interesting thing. It has nothing to do with Poinciana at all, but it has some of the similar bones regarding the orchestration and sort of the arrangement of how this drummer approached this song. In other words, it's got specific patterns that have variations as the song builds. I'm going to play the last part of it, okay? I'm going to remove this other towel. Anybody? Don't Stop Believing. Steve Smith from Journey, right? When you think of Journey, especially that what we call the classic lineup for that band, you think hits, right? And that was a hit. And most of the time when you think of hits, you think of songs that have like, oh, this is kind of like that first beat that I played, right? Something straight down the middle. Well, it does have 4 on the floor on the bass drum, but according to Steve, he got a little restless in the studio and just kind of snuck in some of those right-hand bell patterns, right? So again, these things have nothing to do with one another, but think about from the similarities of Poinciana. Open-handed playing, left hand stays on the hi-hat, just playing eighth notes. Right hand voices those melodies between the cymbal and the toms around the kit. Also, there are numerous versions, right? Or there's numerous variations of it. Like when the drums first come in on it, it's not nearly that complicated. And it's not a 4-bar pattern either. And then he just kind of builds on it, right, as he goes throughout the entire thing, okay? Now, another thing that I want to bring to your attention, most of my students, when they come through my studio, one of the other methods that we work on, one of the great methods in history is New Breed by Gary Chester. And one of the things that it does is it really focuses on right side of the body, left side, right side of the body, left side of the body. And there are certain types of what he calls systems where you play a groove, what we call in a traditional way, where your right hand will play a hi-hat over here, and then your left hand will play the hi-hat on the left side of the drum kit. One of the things that I would be willing to bet you that 95% of my students have issues with is when they are right-handed dominant and they're used to playing right hand on a cymbal or hi-hat and then left hand on a backbeat, they lose what I call your wind-up. You guys know what I'm talking about? What I'm talking about is this. The wind-up is the motion between the beats. That's what gives you your feel, right? The wind-up, the motion, think of it this way. However you move is however you're going to sound. If you move short and choppy, you're going to sound short and choppy. If you move nice round motions, you're going to sound nice and round. And what I mean by the wind-up is this. Okay, if I just play like the cymbal and play a groove, my left hand will have a little wind-up on the beats. Lead from the back of the wrist, a little molar type action, right? Well, what happens a lot of times, and when I have students play that left-handed lead and then right-hand backbeat, it looks like this. Not comfortable, right? So you've got to make sure you balance out the way you play that to where your right hand has those same kinds of motion. Nice little wind-up, because remember, that dictates how you are going to sound. Your motions dictate your feel, okay? Let's see if there's anything else I want to say about on that one. We'll listen to a little bit of it. Okay, so I'm going to move forward a little bit on this. Okay, here we go. This is one of those old 80s recordings. It's boomy. It's kind of hard to hear the hi-hat with the left hand. So here's where he starts putting the bell in with the right hand. Okay. Any questions? I hope I can play this next one. Very nice, very nice. Yes, that's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Steve Gadd. Now, and it's the Paul Simon song, drum part by Steve Gadd. It's my understanding on this one that this is one of those songs we talked about at the beginning, that this groove actually predates the song. In other words, that it was something that he was kind of messing around with, Steve Gadd was messing around with in the studio. And Paul Simon's like, okay, I think I've got something that might work on that, you know? And so let's just talk about this thing for a second, and we'll listen to it as well. There's no doubt you better have some hands on this one. This is Steve Gadd has got an unbelievable background in rudimental drumming. He's steeped in all of the traditional methods of like Wilcoxon, NARD, etc., and it's on display there. Also, look at the independence that it takes to play this, right? There's lots of things in there where the hi-hat kind of works its way, the hi-hat with the foot works its way into the middle of this groove. Not the easiest thing to play, okay? Let's give it a listen here. This groove continues through all the verses, changes to like a little pseudo-disco type feel when you get to the chorus. Didn't see that coming.
Inside your head, she said to me. The answer is easy if you take it logically. I'd like to help you in your struggle to be free. There must be 50 ways to leave your lover.
So young drummers, when your teachers are telling you, practice your 5-stroke roll, practice your double-stroke roll, practice. This is an actual real-world straight-up, and you don't have to think about like, oh, here's an imaginative way to use a 5-stroke roll. Bang! Right at the beginning, right? So a little bit of rudimental knowledge is going to help you on this. Also, as you can see at the end of that first measure there, a little right-handed drag leading into those 16th notes. And then again, at the end of that second measure, it's a 2-measure pattern, that 5-stroke roll, it goes right back in, okay? And then what I was mentioning before, if you look at the of one in both measures, there's that little hi-hat closing with the foot. That in itself, just dropping that in the middle of that groove, incredibly challenging, right, to make it sound right. So again, there's another little nuance on that. Okay. I've got to be self-indulgent. I've got to play this last thing for you guys. Massive bucket full of pride if you get this one. I'm going to call you an honorary spud boy. Yes, that is their arrangement of I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And again, it's totally self-indulgent because I like Devo as well. That's one, honestly, you're probably not going to get called on to play that unless you're either playing with Devo or somebody who wants to play that arrangement, right? And so this is what this looks like. It's way more intimidating looking written out than it is playing it. It's really not that difficult. Just a flam on count 1, and then you've got to play that little bell sound, right, on 2, and then a hi-hat opening on the E of 2. Not that difficult. Let's listen to just a second of it.
I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get me no satisfaction. And I try, and I try, and I try. I can't get no.
All right. It's my understanding that the Rolling Stones were none too happy about it until they started getting their mechanical license and their royalties that came in. Then they're like, oh, that's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so the one thing about this groove plays all the way through that song. So you better have some endurance, right? Because you got to play that thing consistently for, the 3.5 minutes or whatever that it takes. And again, think about this also. It's got some of that open-handed concept to it as well when you play through, okay? Any questions about anything? Let's give away some more gear. All right? Let's do it. All right.